Hey, can you hear me? How are you today? Good. So let me start by saying it's great to be here. It's great to talk to such a great community, such a vibrant community as WarsawJS. And today I would like to talk a little bit about blockchain. So who heard about blockchain before? Okay, like almost a half of you. So before we go to that, let me do a small step back into our history of our world, as in particular into Wild West. So if you watch movies about Wild West, what do you remember about them? Cowboys. What else? Shooting. Excellent. What else? What are salutes? Saloons. Yeah. Well, saloons doesn't fit perfectly my point, but Wild West is very interesting because it's the last time you remember and have documented that civilization was created. So what was the problems? The main problem when civilization is created is trust. So you cannot trust your neighbor. Maybe he's gonna rob you. Maybe he's gonna steal your money. And the way we decided as a civilization to address those issues is through creating trusted third parties, like sheriff or bank, where you can store your money and feel being safe from money being stolen. So we're gonna go back to that topic in a moment. But then let's talk about blockchain. So probably most of you heard about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency created in 2009. Nobody knows who created the cryptocurrency, but essentially what they did is they built a decentralized money. So they built a digital money, or someone, he or her, built a digital money with no central authority, with no central third party, with limited amount of cash in a way that nobody can cheat the system. So basically, and we can go a little bit more into detail, but basically what Bitcoin is a distributed database. It's nothing else but just a distributed database, and there is a bunch of nodes that connect to the database, and they can edit the database, but it happens so that I can only change the amount of money I have by transferring some of the money to someone else. So all those little details are figured out with private and public keys, with wallets, and a lot of other things. And if you decide to create a different version of the history, the different version of the database, that's fine, you can do it, but you get forked into a separate system. So the main system remains unchanged, and you can create your own version when you have infinite money or whatever. So this was a big discovery, and I think there is a lot we can say about what Bitcoin is under the hood, but we're gonna stick to very simple metaphor and say Bitcoin is a distributed database, which is basically just one table that has the history of all the transactions in the past, and each transaction is simply three fields: from, to, and amount, being person who we're transferring bitcoins from, person who we transfer bitcoins to, and the amount of bitcoins we're transferring. Would be a little bit more precise if we say, okay, this is not real people, this is just their public addresses, the addresses of their wallets. So Bitcoin was there since 2009, and it's on its way to disrupt the financial world, but something happened very interesting not long ago, and it is called Ethereum. So Ethereum is also a blockchain. Today, Ethereum is number 2 in terms of market capitalization, so we're talking about billions of dollars already. And Ethereum has a very similar concept. It's a blockchain, it's a database. You can still think about the database that has just one table and 3 fields: from, to, and data. Now the difference is the data field can now have all kinds of different data. It can be value, the same as in Bitcoin, and one person can just transfer some Ether to some other person. As simple as that. But you can also create a new kind of transaction, and this is a transaction that comes from real address, from a real person that doesn't have a receiver, and instead of sending value, we send a piece of computer code. Okay? And what happens, this code gets stored in the blockchain, it gets deployed to the blockchain, and it stays there probably forever, or at least until the last full node of Ethereum gonna exist. And what also happens is this piece of code, it gets its own address. In a similar way, we have addresses of wallets, who perhaps there are real people behind those addresses. Now we have two kinds of addresses. And now that we have that address, any wallet, any person can send a message to a contract, and the same way the message can be sent with value, we can give some money to the contract, but also, remember, contract is just a simple piece of code, but we can also send another type of message, the one that calls a function in a contract. Does that make sense so far? Okay. Simple, right? Okay. So let's do a summary before we accelerate. We have two kinds of animals living in our Ethereum zoo. We have wallets that are most likely being owned by people. We have contracts that are pieces of code living in the blockchain, and we can send money between all of them, and we can send method calls to the contracts. Contracts can send money to contracts. Method calls can be sent from contract to contract. Okay, so what happens under the hood? Under the hood, we have a virtual machine. So every node has every full node. Not every node needs to be full. Not every Ethereum client needs to have all the blockchain. But every full node has all the history of all the transactions, of all the code being deployed. And whenever there is a call, every single node executes the code. So the language is Turing complete, and those of you who have technical background should know what it means, but basically means you can write anything. And it's deterministic, meaning that the result of the execution of the code will be exactly the same on every single machine. And because everyone stores everything, you need to pay for execution. Every line of code, it costs to execute. Okay? And I know what some of you might think. Why do I care? Well, let's imagine a contract. We deploy a contract. Maciek, would you make a contract with me? Sure. So here is a contract, and I'm putting some money to the contract, and Maciek is putting some money to the contract, perhaps 1 Ether each, and then contract randomly pick one of us and give all the money to the person. What just happened? We just built a lottery on the blockchain. We didn't have regulatory body. There was no company behind it. There is no commission checking, komora maszyny losującej. There's no show in TV. But also, it's impossible to cheat because the code was put into the blockchain, and assuming it was reviewed and there is no bugs and it works as expected, there is no way to cheat because the code is going to be executed. Okay? So we were able to build. We can, of course, generalize contract to have, instead of just me and Maciek, 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever. We can build all the rules that other lotteries have, and it's there. Okay? So how about if I put some money to the contract, Maciek puts some money to the contract, and then depending on the result of the tomorrow football match, one of us gonna get the money. Say, Poland wins, Maciek get the money. Germany wins, I get the money. Okay? Then we just built a very simple contract that perhaps have no more than 10 or maybe 100 of lines that serves as a bookmaker. Without a company, without a lady behind the desk, without the risk assessment or all the regulatory body, yet one that you cannot cheat in, or it's very difficult to cheat in. Okay, I say, okay, I'm not into gambling. How about I and Maciek will put some money, maybe perhaps we ask some of you to put some money as well to the contract, and we say if one of us has a fire in the apartment, then we're gonna use that money to rebuild the apartment. So we just build an insurance on the blockchain. Well, one question comes, how do we know there is a fire in the apartment? And it's a very interesting question. We can, for example, vote together on it, or maybe we perhaps need to supply some kinds of evidence. But all the rest It's there, right? The whole insurance company, we can just code it. And you can really think about any kind of company. Any kind of company, and if you think hard, you can probably figure out how to disrupt this part of economy by building something on the blockchain. So people now build investment funds, loan companies. I think the first batch of companies is going to be mainly financial companies, but the next batch is going to be what you call it, sharing, like Airbnb and Uber. Shared economy, exactly. So today technology is not there yet, but it's getting better every day, and we think like applications like Uber, they don't necessarily need a regulation or body, they don't necessarily need a company behind it. We can just build a distributed app that no one owns. And what really happens is like there is like thousands of startups, literally thousands of startups trying to build everything on blockchain. Coming back to Wild West, so the blockchain is kind of a big thing because what all those companies try to do, what all those people behind blockchain try to do is to redefine how we build civilization by responding to the problem of trust. Instead of having centralized authorities, instead of having third parties, we say, how about we predefine all the rules in the contract, or as many as possible in the contract, and let it all be as automatic as possible. So I think when talking about blockchain, it's worth to talk about tokens as well. So, I had such a nice slide. Now imagine a contract. Imagine a contract that has a list of different Ethereum addresses of different wallets, and it stores the balance, how much money who has, okay? The new kind of money, not Ethereum, but new. We define new kind of money. And then we define on the rules, I cannot spend more money, I can transfer money to someone else, but not more than I have, you know, and all this, I cannot have a negative balance and all the things, right? So we build a smart contract that is kind of like a cryptocurrency itself, right? So we build a contract that defines new cryptocurrency. It's inception, bro. Yeah? So we now this new cryptocurrency doesn't use any of it doesn't require all the new infrastructure. You don't need to code the blockchain from start because you have all the Ethereum infrastructure. You just put simple rules inside the contract. And you can use Ethereum wallet, so if you have a lot of those new tokens, then you can use one wallet to use all of the tokens you have. So, and this happened, and people start building all kinds of tokens starting last year. And among those ideas, something that get a lot of traction is named ICO, which is named for initial coin offering. So we're getting a little bit more advanced now. So imagine I have a company, okay? And this company is going to create a new kind of economy. Say like Uber, right? It's a small economy that is created by the app. How about I have internal currency that I use to pay for Uber? Can I do that? Technically, yes, of course. Legally, it's a little bit more complicated. But let's assume for now that we can do it legally. And I say here, and I come to you and say, look, I'm going to build this great Uber killer company. And it's going to have 1 million Uber tokens. And people are going to use it. People are going to use it to pay for Uber, you know. And I sell you each token for $1. And if the economy going to grow, you know, this 1 million going to be worth like hundreds of millions or perhaps billions of dollars. If I fail, well, I ask you each to pay only a couple of dollars, so it doesn't really matter. Okay? So that's what happened. And we are now in the middle of ICO mania. Like really first real ICO happened like last fall, so we're talking less than a year ago. And only in this year, companies rise through ICO over $1.5 billion. Okay? $1.5 billion. That's 6-7 times more than blockchain companies rise from VCs in the same time. And that alone is more than 1% of worldwide VC investments this year. It's something that like really started last fall. So it's becoming real alternative, real new possibility to raise money, and well, it's happening. It's really happening, and a lot of companies are getting a lot of money. So going a little bit technically, but also a little bit philosophy. So what blockchain is trying to do is define the Web 3.0. So with Web 1.0, we usually had service provider and the customers, and they were connected with the application on the server. So if you wanted to set up a shop, what you do is you go to, you install a platform or you code your own shop, and then people would go to your website and can buy stuff from you, pets.com. Or if you want to put a photo gallery, you set up a website, you put your photos there, right? Web 2.0 is all about platforms. So in Web 2.0, you don't set up your own website with pictures. You create a Facebook account. You don't create your own shop. You go to Shopify. So you don't set up your website with all the music you've done after hours. You go to SoundCloud or Spotify. And technically, it all moved to the cloud. So we have this, cloud of servers, and everything kind of runs then, and there's all kinds of different services. So what blockchain is trying to do, what blockchain community is trying to build, is to define this Web 3.0 with new model, with new business model and new technological model. So now we have all those different people connected, service providers and customers via software like we used to have, but the software is on blockchain, so there is no server involved at all. Everybody has his own copy of the blockchain on a part of the blockchain, but there is no single server involved. And we not necessarily have a platform provider, but we still need to find a way to build this stuff. So this is the new role that comes to the developers. Okay, so let's see this animal called smart contract. So here is a simple smart contract. You might have already noticed that contract is kind of like an object in object-oriented programming. So on the top we have an object or contract called mortal. Mortal is simply a contract that you can kill, because if you can't kill the contract, you're gonna stay in the blockchain forever. So we define the address of the wallet, the public address of the wallet of the owner, and in the constructor we save, in the constructor model we save this for later. And then later, if you want to kill it, we make sure that only owner can kill it, because we don't want to deploy contracts just for some troll running around contracts and killing all the contracts that he can find. And now we define greeter, which is basically a hello world, and it delivers, it inherits from mortal, so it can be killed. All we do is we store the greeting, and later on, if we add the contract for the greeting, it's going to return the greeting. Even such a simple contract can be used for something interesting. Using this contract, you can store something in the blockchain forever. You deploy it once, you pay for it, and it's going to stay there forever, and at least until the last Ethereum node exists. Good? But that's just the part of the story. The other part of the story is the apps. So the apps are basically applications that you can build on top of blockchain. So it happens that a lot of that happens in the JavaScript, and you can just create a contract based on its source code. You can deploy it to the blockchain. So I think the await is missing here, so it's going to take some time for the greeter to actually be put into the contract in the second line, to be deployed to the blockchain in the second line, and then we can ask it to give us an answer. And again, we need to use await, because it's actually going to ask the blockchain. It's going to make some kind of Ajax call to know that it's going to actually check what's in the blockchain. Does that make sense so far? Excellent. At least one person. So, okay, one question that might pops up in your mind is, okay, what does it all have to do with JavaScript? You know, okay, I saw you some code in JavaScript, but really, like, almost the whole ecosystem of Ethereum blockchain is written in JavaScript. So we have a bunch of frameworks. WebJS is a connection between browser and the blockchain, so we can build applications to put it directly, there is no backend in the application, right? There is a UI application, and the only backend is the blockchain. So Web3.js is something that allows you to do that. Truffle is a framework for compilation, deployment, and all the utility around it. It's all in JavaScript. There is Swarm and IPFS, which is massive storage. You probably don't want to put pictures. You don't want to put your avatar in the blockchain because it's going to cost you like $100 at least. So for those data that takes a lot of space, you probably want to use distributed storage. And we, for example, use React and Redux for building interfaces, but you can pick your favorite library as well. There is Parity that is almost invisible here, and MetaMask, which are the blockchain clients. Parity is a plugin to Chrome. MetaMask is something that has WebKit embedded. So if you create interfaces for blockchain applications, it only needs to be able to work on WebKit, because pretty much every single Ethereum client works on WebKit. Yeah, so one more shot on architecture. The way we used to do it, the way we do it. Again, we have no central server in this case. Yeah, so DApps is really much more than just blockchain. You need distributed storage. As I mentioned, you need oracles because we somehow need to know who won the match. So oracles is the way to push information into the contracts. There's different ways of doing it. Some people say, okay, we're going to do voting and we're going to put reputation on people. Can we trust them? Some people try to do it in more cryptographic way and try to prove that something was at a given time and a given website. They can actually do it pretty well. A number of companies just doing different kinds of oracles. Whisper P2P protocol that allows you to build chats, notifications, and all those kind of things that you probably don't want to use Ethereum and Swarm for, and stablecoins. So stablecoins are tokens that you put on the blockchain that represent fiat currency like dollar or PLN. So when I insure my company, when I insure my flat, I do it in PLN on USD, not in Ether. That price is going like this. Good. We have a separate meetup. I don't know if I'm allowed to cross-market other meetups. That's me. Feel free to follow me on Twitter, and perhaps you have some questions.